would like to welcome Diana Betancourt to the Power BI Community Times in South Florida and virtual. Diana is a customer engineer at Microsoft. She has tons of experience in the world of data and technology, especially with Microsoft SQL Server and data technologies. She has been leading and volunteering for the technical community for at least 10 years that I'm aware, I believe more, here in South Florida, Panama, and probably anywhere she visits. She's also a speaker, a trainer, a mentor, and probably she has more to tell us. And I wanted to thank you, Diana, for your visit today and taking us on this special mission to learn about the Power BI gateways. And Diana, if you're ready, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I also wanted to say that I saw on Twitter that there is going to be an online Power BI event, 2 full days from the Panama Power BI user group, Power Platform user group. And it looks like they're going to be giving away prizes, and it's going to be really interesting. Now that all of these events are online, is incredible. We can be anywhere. So let's take advantage of that. Okay, so I want to share with you that this topic came because I was helping some of my clients resolve some complicated issue, and then talking to Cecilia, it's like, I think this area can use a little bit more light, more information, more conversation, so that we demystify what is the Power BI gateway and how does it work. So as with any of my trainings, I want to say the learning is never done. Maybe I will encourage your questions, but if I encounter any that I don't know, I can always find out. But we're in this together, guys. It's all about sharing, and just like Cecilia said, it's about sharing the knowledge and putting ourselves out there. The more that we share, the more that we learn. So let me get my PowerPoint slides ready to be shared with you guys. And give me just one. And I'm ready. Power BI gateways. Let me start by introducing myself. So just like Ceci mentioned, I have been involved with the community for quite some time. I have been in industry over 25 years, working with data. It's funny, right? I say, like, if I had been reformed, it's like, yes, I was a developer, so I know kind of the ins and outs, the pain that goes into it, or the sacrifices, all the hard work. So I can give you some tips as we go along, as it applies. I have been working as a PFE. We currently change our roles in Microsoft, so it's a customer engineer now, and working on on-premises and cloud data sources. Some of the things that I'm passionate about are database auditing and best practices. I believe that all of the good design should go from the beginning so that we have less performance tuning issues at the end. Performance tuning is ever evolving. Also, SQL Server DB, business intelligence, including SQL Server Analysis Services, Microsoft Azure, and I have done some DevOps along with some Databricks. So along with that, I have some hobbies when I have some free time, which is playing the guitar, just getting back into flute playing, and I also volunteer at a local women cancer organization locally because it's very important to me, as one of my parents passed away from cancer. So it's important to give back. It's like therapy. It's so good. Walk and run and dance whenever there's time. On the personal side, I'm a strong advocate for women in technology. We need to help each other succeed, just as disability and inclusion. So when something happens to any one of us, let's think, how can I apply that knowledge to help other people based on my experience? So I think that's where I'm headed. So you will see some of my posts in online media about those topics. I was a co-organizer of SQL Saturday, so I help Ceci whenever I can, right? And other user groups also. I always try to give back. But as a panelist, a speaker, and coach, I think my biggest accomplishment is my 3 wonderful young kids. Well, they're adults now, yes. I was just talking about a SpongeBob with my daughter today, and she's 30 years old. And she's like, yes, Mom, I still like SpongeBob. So anyway, that is my intro. So now, welcome to this special mission. Are you ready? Let's talk about the gateway.
Yes.
We're with you, Diana.
I'm sorry? Okay, let's keep on going. So welcome to this special mission. What is the gateway? What is it? What does it sound like? It sounds like a passageway, right? So the gateway is an agent that is installed in your corporate network, and it acts as a broker. It securely handles your data connectivity going from and to on-premises and data sources, right? As I was looking for pictures for this presentation, you know what came to mind? When you go to an important party and they have somebody at the door checking if you are in the list of invitees, right? It's like, okay, are you permitted? Yes. If not, sorry. So it securely handles that passageway. What else? It also handles the data communication between the gateway by encrypting and decrypting that data as it goes through it, right? So it's secure. So do I need a gateway? Okay, that sounds great. Do I need it? When is it required to have a gateway? It's required for the following activities. I have data that is now in the Power BI service, and that data needs to be refreshed. But let's think about it. That data comes from an on-premise data source. That means now the service in the cloud needs to communicate to on-premise, right? That means it needs to travel to on-premise, get that data, put it in the service, refresh it. Who is going to handle that? That broker, right? That gateway. If I am using direct query to query from the Power BI service, but again, that source is on-premise. And if I'm using analysis services, live connection to query data from the Power BI service, look at the common denominator here between all of this. From the Power BI service, from the Power BI service to my on-premises data sources. It doesn't matter if it's import, direct query, you still need to have that broker to get permission to get into that data, to get into your on-prem. So here is a graph, more to illustrate how is that. Did you notice this little guy has the glasses, right? That is the special agent. It's even use the tie and everything, right? So it handles that in the middle. Can you go through it? Yes. If you cannot go through the broker, you're not getting into my data, which is a good way to give who are the data guardians at your organization. That way, it's secure. It's triple secure because nothing is going to go through it. Not even the gateway is going to be able to get into your data. It's simply, the one that handles the communication back and forth. Okay, that was a funny picture. Now, the architecture. How does it work? Internally, it goes through a gateway cloud service. Then it goes through the Azure Service Bus, and then the application gateway. In other words, the data gateway that as we know it, right? So this is the data gateway that we're going to talk about today. What happens behind the scenes? Let's break that down because it's going to get interesting from here on. All right. So the on-premises data gateway acts as a bridge, right? It provides that security in between, you know, do you see that line? That security between my cloud data sources and my on-premise data sources. Now, let's say a query is created in the cloud service, you know, it's encrypted, and it needs to go down to an on-premise data source, right? So then it passes that to the gateway, right? The first thing, it passes it to the gateway service. Then from there, it gets all packaged, right? Encrypted, packaged, and put in the service bus. Then from the service bus, it goes, it's almost like you know, when you go to a restaurant and somebody take an order and they take the order, they put it in the kitchen and they put it, you know, either they tape it, and then from there, the cook goes and grab the ticket and cook your food. So when it goes into the Azure Service Bus, it's almost like it's posting the information there. And the gateway is the cook, right? It's over here preparing the data, cooking, right? And then it's like, oh, I have a ticket. So is the gateway the one that probes the Azure Service Bus, grabs that for the pending request, and decrypt the data, decrypt the credentials, I'm sorry, not the data, decrypt the credentials and send that, okay, this ticket is for SQL Server. Okay, here you go, SQL Server. Cook that for me. This is for analysis services. You do it. Okay, when it's ready, I have it ready. Let me send it back out, right? That's why when we go and review in a little bit more of the networkings in and out, I'm going to tell you the gateway, you know, doesn't need permissions inbound, because that's a lot of the worries out there. Does it have, does this gateway thing, does this cloud thing, you know, especially for those who are network administrators or database administrators, do I need to give them permission to my environment? No way, right? So we tend to be a little, what can I call it? You know, overzealous of our data. And that's okay. I was a data administrator for 13 years, so I know how that feels. You know, if I have to stay awake all night fixing an issue, I'm going to be very careful to who and what I give access to. So explaining that again, you know, the data comes down, it gets posted in the Azure Service Bus. The Azure Service Bus goes and grabs that ticket. Okay, and then it distributes. Okay, SQL Server, give me that. Okay, go cook that for me. SharePoint, give me that data. Analysis services, hurry up. You know, and then it brings, when it gets that data ready, then it goes outbound, it goes up. That's why we need outbound ports, because it needs to bring that data now, the result of that query, it needs to go back out to Power BI, right? So those are the outbound ports that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Gateway security. Are you liking the graphics? I love it. So I usually tell people, it's like, you know, I have to wipe your memory from everything that you know or you have ever known about this topic before. Not necessarily gateways, but I use that example in other classes. So how does the gateway security work? So we have credentials that are encrypted using asymmetric encryption key so that they cannot be decrypted in the cloud. In other words, only the owner is going to be able to read that data, right? And during the gateway installation and the configuration, the administrator has to type a gateway recovery key, and that key is used to generate the two sets of much stronger keys, the RSA key, I think that terminology we're familiar with, and the AES key, right? The AES symmetric key. So those generated keys are stored in a file located on the local machine, and that file is also encrypted. So the contents of the file can only be decrypted by that particular Windows machine and only by that particular Windows or gateway service account. So that's why I mentioned at the beginning, it's like triple secure. So the credentials are sent to the machine running the gateway, right? That's why that gateway, you know, this gateway guy over here, let me change the pointer so it's more noticeable. This gateway guy here is the one handling that encryption and decryption. And then from there, it goes and sends that request, not data, request to the sources. It uses data compression when it needs to transport that back out, as well as encryption. Any question at this point? No question?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay. Comments from the pictures? Nope. You know, I wanted to put sunglasses to look like the special agent, but the problem is that I need these glasses to read. So I blame it on, you know, I need this to work. Okay. So there are two types of gateways. We have the personal mode and we have the enterprise mode. By the way, guys, I like meetings that are really interactive. So if you don't ask me questions, I'm going to ask you questions. So be ready. The data gateway, personal mode. What can I use it for? So you're learning Power BI. You're trying out how does it work. Maybe you are not the Power BI administrator at your company, but you still want to know how to set up the gateway. So you can install it locally as personal mode. You may not have all the features, right, as an enterprise one, but you can still use it, right, for refreshing your data sources. Here we go. It's a good chart to give you what you have the capability to do. And the enterprise one is the one that you can work with PowerApps, Flow, Logic Apps, Analysis Services, Azure. Notice Azure Analysis Services, not the on-premise, Azure Analysis Services. So now let's talk about installation, setup, and management. And I put multiple guys here because we can have gateway clusters too. You see, they all look the same. So it's interesting. Kind of scary. Was that a scary movie? Who remember that movie?
That was in The Matrix. That was The Matrix. I love the glasses, Diana. Really good.
We have a question about VPNs from Alexei. He says, do you have to set up a VPN between your on-prem network and Azure VNet in order to use this gateway?
No, because the gateway is going to sit on your on-premises data, on your on-premise, on your network, on your own network. And the way that it communicates, you have to have ports that are going to be open. Either you communicate to the port or you communicate to HTTPS. So I'm going to specify that in a little bit. So that communication has to be open. They have to be able to communicate. So the server where the on-premise data source is located is going to connect to cloud data sources. It's not going to connect to a cloud server. It's going to connect to a service, which is different than connecting to a server. I hope that answers your question. It's going to connect to the service bus.
We have an extra question.
Yes.
From Pedro. What is a personal gateway used for? I thought it was only for local files on a local computer versus enterprise gateway for on-prem SQL servers.
You can use your personal gateway for anything as far as is your own personal use, right? So, for example, I'm not the Power BI admin of Microsoft. I work there, sure, but I don't have admin privileges. So all I can do is set up a personal gateway to play around with the gateway, to update my data sources, but you can use the data sources for anything. Maybe I have a report that is using SQL Server. Maybe I have a report that is using CSV files. Or maybe I have another report that is using Analysis Services, right? So it can use all of that. Personal gateway can handle that traffic as far as it's only used for Power BI. I think that's the main difference. It's only used for Power BI. See, I cannot use it for all these other ones. Let me bring this here. So you can see those services in the cloud, PowerApps, Power BI, Microsoft Flow, Azure Logic Apps. So if I have the gateway, enterprise mode, I can use it for any of those. If I'm using personal mode, I can only use it for Power BI.
Got it. Diana, just another quick question on that. So for the personal gateway, if you do want to use it, it needs to be, your personal computer needs to be on if you want to schedule something to refresh, right? So that'll be like a dedicated system that you're using to practice and to see if it refreshes from your personal computer, right?
Yeah, that is true. It has to be on. Okay. I'm thinking another scenario. Maybe you set up a VM, right, as a sandbox. That could be an option. Okay, so let's go with how do I install it? How do I set it up? And how do I manage it? Because I think that's where it comes tricky about that service bus question. I have more information for you guys on that. So the gateway installation. If I'm in the Power BI service, I basically go to that top right-hand corner, right? And click on download, data gateway, and that is going to basically put me, it's going to download that for me. I go to download, I click on it, and it presents to me two questions, personal mode or enterprise mode. Or I can just search online for the download for that data gateway. So what are the steps? Set up my on-premise data gateway involves this process. Install the gateway on a server in the corporate network, right? Like if I'm installing the enterprise one, only a one-time installation. Then I go to the Power BI service, and now I'm going to configure the sources that have permission to go through that broker. Remember when I mentioned you have that person on the door checking, can you come in? Yes. Are you invited to the party? Nope, out. So that broker needs to know who is coming into the party, right? So, okay, now you have a gateway, great. Everything is going to work automatically? No. You have to tell the gateway what are those data sources that have permission to go through that door. Okay, I hope the analogy works. And then set up the data set from there. You can go to your data set in Power BI. Let's say you have already published that report. You go to your data set, and now you can actually use the refresh schedule and set up your refresh schedule as needed. but very important. So what happens if I'm not the Power BI admin, right? So I'm working on a report. Let's say I'm here. I work on a report. I publish that report, and I try to do a schedule refresh because I know my company is using a data gateway, but like I mentioned, it's not going to work like that. You have to notify the Power BI administrator if that is the designated person to then configure that in the gateway. They need to configure, even if it's a CSV file, even if it's, I don't know, some other static file. I have to specify it in the gateway so that it knows that it needs to refresh through that gateway. Okay. I'm waiting for questions. If not, I have a question for you guys.
Well, I have a question.
I like it. As soon as I told people I'm going to ask questions, the questions started popping in. Good.
If I'm, because there's different types of users, obviously, for Power BI. If I'm developing stuff, this gateway may make sense to run, get to the data till I get everything working the way I want. But if I'm not the producer or developer of it, if I'm the consumer of it, would I need a gateway then, or would I simply log into it to its published results wherever they are?
Mm-hmm. So yes, if you're consuming, you only need to go ahead and click and consume the report. At that point, the person who, let's say the developer, I usually use this analogy, a web developer, right? They are developing a web page and they have here Visual Studio. They go to the migration process. They migrated that. Now the page is live. Anybody going to the web page, they don't need to configure IIS. They don't need to configure permissions. They only go and click and use it, right? So if you're developing a report, you need to take care of that, right? You need to take care of you or the Power BI admin. You need to take care of the dataset refresh. Maybe you have one report that is using a composite model. You're using direct query. You're using import mode. You're using several things there, but you need to make sure that your report is still refreshing, and that will be part of that initial migration or that initial setup. Make sense?
That does make sense. A year or so ago, I had never even heard of a Power BI admin. so now we're getting all these other roles involved in the use of Power BI. Is that the way things are going to end up there? This is the same type of administrative things that are in the database itself.
Yeah. Can you believe? Yeah, things are definitely changing, right? So there is a Power BI admin, the one that ultimately has permissions to everything, and and then you have maybe the data stewards, maybe the people who are developing data models only, or maybe you have report developers, right? That can be a third layer. Maybe they can be just a team dedicated nothing but creating reports, right? And if they create reports based on data that needs refreshing, then maybe I'm inventing a new role, the data stewards, right? So those people taking care of the data, then they need to take care of that baby, right? It's like, okay, I need to take care of that data to make sure it's up to date, that it's clean, that it has the permissions, it has that schedule. I don't know. Maybe that's a new breed of data administrators. Okay.
I have a question for you. Diana.
Yes.
So say the data, enterprise data is in the Azure cloud, and there's a firewall. Is there any special, anything special that has to be done if there's a firewall?
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. Yeah, there we have to make sure certain ports are open for that purpose. So let me get to that point. I want to make sure I mention something before it escaped my mind. So I got a question about what about if I have a cluster, right? So I have several gateways and they're all in this environment. Which one is going to take care of my request? So if I have a gateway cluster, remember the gateway, this step here, configure the source data, the data source, so that the gateway knows who's coming in the door. So I have an example. I may have 3 gateways, but only one has been configured to handle that data. So that means only that door is going to open, right? Because only that gateway knows who that data source is, right? So important that when we configure multiple gateways, we also have to configure it to know which are the data sources that are going to come through it, right? Then from there, the data set, you can go to the data set and you can schedule refreshes, as you are probably already familiar. Next, I mentioned gateway clusters, right? So if you have gateway clusters, then the way that the place where we would manage those is now in the Power Platform admin page, right? You can manage your data sources, you can manage your gateway clusters, and I was playing around with this on my own setup. You know, so you can see here personal mode, and then if I had the enterprise mode, this will be enabled. I had nothing there. So take a note of admin.powerplatform.microsoft.com. Okay. Now that I have the gateway, so I installed the gateway in personal mode. Super simple to set up. So you only have to provide an email address, and there it is. And what happens? Let me actually start combining with examples here. I'm bringing my gateway. Okay, so this is my gateway, right? And it says that it's all set up and it's personal mode. So it's gonna definitely let me know where I am, right? So if I sign in, let me sign in real quick. Just gonna go through permissions. Okay. And now it's online and ready to use. I have to pay attention that I am on the latest, you know, just like Power BI desktop, I have to keep an eye to make sure that I'm always using the latest release. But from there, I can restart the gateway from here. Restart now, that is what this slide is referring to, right? On the machine where the gateway is installed, I can open the gateway app, meaning this one, the gateway, and hit restart now. Or I can go to Windows Services because it's running as a service and select the start from there. Or for those who like command prompt, or maybe we're doing something programmatically, what is the service called? Is the PBIGW service. So 3 different ways to stop and start the service. We're going to visit this more of these options later. So the network port test, I think this is one of the most important steps of all, because I have set up my gateway and I'm excited, I'm ready to use it, and something happens. So it's like, it's not working. Wait, maybe it's just a tweak. Maybe it's something that I need to correct there, right? I need to make sure I have access to the correct ports for the Azure Service Bus Relay. And this is a very important keyword here, the Azure Service Bus Relay. It's not a server that I'm connecting to. It's not an IP address. How many of you are familiar with SQL Server always on? Raise your hand. Or Windows Server failover cluster. Let me look at the chat window. Let's see how many hands. Hands. Okay, the other hand. No? Okay. So what happens when you are connecting to a failover cluster or to always on, to an AG? You are basically connecting to a virtual server to, basically you want to abstract what happens behind. Maybe I have like a workforce running behind it, you know, it's like 10 servers are working behind that to power that, to make sure that nothing ever goes down. You know, I want to put the example of the hurricane that just hit us here, right? It's like all of the hurricane preparation, and then it comes this little innocent storm, and all of a sudden we're flooded and internet goes down, my cable went out, I had no choice but to cook and clean my house. It was crazy. So with that example, if I'm connecting to an abstract layer, right, meaning the Azure Service Bus Relay, so it doesn't matter if I have 50 servers behind it, if I have 10 servers behind it, I don't need to connect on a specific IP address. I'm connecting to the Azure Service Bus Relay. And that is what we need to pay attention to. I'm going to show you. I'm going to bring my on-premise data gateway, and I'm going to go into the diagnostic and under network port test, right? That is where you want to go. That's where you want to click on and start a new test. What are you going to see when you run that test? You are going to see the service bus namespace. That is exactly what I was talking about. Here we go. That is what you're connecting to. What is the horsepower behind all of that? All of these servers. All of these servers is that horsepower powering that connection. Do I need to worry about each one of these IP addresses? I have only seen it with a few cases where, you know, maybe a government customer or somebody or some company that really detailed. So, and even in those cases, I have seen that some differences there, where it wasn't the gateway, it was something else on the network. So what happens here? So I get the results, right? And the results are going to tell me, okay, it connected to 40 successfully. That is that horsepower powering that Azure Service Bus. And so to answer the question about the VPN connection and all of that, you're connecting to an endpoint, right? You're connecting to a namespace. And I'm going to provide more details to the person who asked me. The other thing that we need to pay attention to is the port. That is key. It connects to port 80 or it connects to port 443. Sometimes port 80 is like for internet, right? So if that port is no good, then you can select the HTTPS on. I'm going to show you 1 second. So all of my tests went okay. And notice all of them are connecting to 443. 443, 443, 443. Perfecto. Okay. If I need to collect extra information about my gateway, I can export the logs. I can actually start collecting additional information, but be careful with this one. This is like running a trace in SQL Server. If you forget about that runaway trace, it's like a train. It can, runaway train, it can kill you. So make sure it's turned on for a short period of time, collect the information that you need and turn it off. Okay. Now, I mentioned HTTPS mode, meaning I want to make sure that I connect to that instead of TCP IP. So I'm going to use this toggle here to select it. It's also in an article that I'm going to share with you guys, because this article is one of those strange articles that are like really, it's not like so much geek information that it gets you lost in the middle of the article, right? And you're like, but it's more like, wow, I love this. Okay, so I don't know if that sounds too geek. It's like, wow, I love the article. Have I been completely assimilated to gateways? I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to move that to the side and continue with the presentation. So, the article that I promised. Let me bring that into context. 1 second, I'm trying to find it. I have like a million things open, but I prepared before this call. Here it is. Beautiful. So adjust communication settings for the on-premises data gateway. I'll make sure I copy this and put it on the chat window. Enable outbound communications. Yes, we know that. The next thing, where is really the bulk of the information, the gold here, the golden key? I'm going to show you that this is the golden key here. Servicebus.windows.net. So if I have a firewall, I need to make sure that these ports are open, right? Because remember, then the gateway has to be able to communicate with the service bus through this port, right? They need to be able to talk to each other. So 443 and 9350 to 9354. And then it talks about the network port test that I mentioned and what we need to look for when we are looking at this information right here, right? It's really easy. It's very clear when you run that network port test. It would tell you which port is closed. It's like, okay, this one, perfect, 9354. Remember, 9350 to 9354. That needs to be open, right? And if you need to enforce communication through HTTPS, then make sure you turn that on. A little extra information about TLS. I haven't really played with that, but the information is here. So I'm going to provide that article in the chat window for all of you before I forget. Okay, so that is a really good article. I really like it. It was concise and to the point. So going back to the slides, the network port test, right? How it can help us determine really fast what is happening. Pay attention to the ports. The ports are golden. And only worry about the Azure Service Bus. If you need to whitelist IP addresses, make sure you whitelist the servicebus.microsoft. I think it's in that article. Hold on, let me open the network port test again. Right? Make sure you whitelist this. Servicebus.windows.net. Star.servicebus.windows.net instead of individual IP addresses. Why? The IP addresses change every single week. It's not the Power BI team that manage that. It's not, there are so many teams. So there is a specific team inside Microsoft that manages these IP addresses. Power BI is a consumer of that. So it's very important that you don't give yourself more work than we have to, right? So if we can whitelist this as just like that, we can assure that we're only connecting to the service bus because that's the only thing that Power BI needs, the Power BI gateway needs. Okay, let's keep going. Network proxy. So I can use service principal. I can use port 80 and port 443, but we saw from the article and from this scenario that it uses mostly 443, especially if I click on that HTTPS setting. So really, really cool, really important. Performance can be affected. I am actually actively, well, I already solved that problem, but I work with a large client that changed that and didn't report any single performance issue. So I think it's a pretty good solution. No inbound ports are needed, only outbound, right? Remember that kitchen, that cook, the broker received the request, put that ticket in the kitchen, and then SQL Server goes running. Okay, I have a ticket, grab the ticket. Okay, SQL Server, go cook that data. Okay, yeah boy, I'm coming. Okay, it goes cook that data, bring it back. And when you bring it back is when it needs that port open because this is the outbound port. Now I bring the data, okay, the data is ready for you, broker. It's like, okay, if you did good, I give you a tip. And then now the proxy, I'm sorry, not the proxy, the gateway will transfer that data encrypted with all the security mechanisms that we talked earlier through that port into to the service bus, and from the service bus to the gateway service, and from the gateway service to Power BI. Why I should not whitelist individual IP addresses? They are listed for, like I said, it's a list that comes out and that can be updated every week. Meaning, I whitelisted this week, everything is working great. Maybe 2 weeks down the road, now something doesn't work. I need to continuously update the address list according to this public document. I'm going to provide you with the link for that. If your company said that you have to do it, okay, 1 second, where is that article? Here we go. What I'm going to do, instead of opening all these windows, I'm going to just move this over. So this is the article that has the Azure IP ranges and service tags and is a public document. When you click on download, it downloads a file that contains all of the service tags. It's a JSON file. And if I open that, oh, it's open Visual Studio. That is kind of gonna take a minute. Pardon the mess. I haven't updated my Visual Studio, so might be something coming up here. It's like under construction, pardon the dust. Okay, so here you can see massive amount of information, right? So IP addresses are updated and also per region. So if we do a search, and I'm going to search for Azure Service Bus. There we go, right? Australia, Central, and then Central 2, East. So you can see all the different regions. So depending on the region, let me find the East Asia, East US. Here we go. You know, it depends where is your tenant. Then you will have to whitelist all of the IP addresses listed here. But then remember that carries out another task, meaning you have to keep that up to date because this document can be updated on a weekly basis. So remember that. So the better option is, you know, why not use that servicebus.windows.net, start.servicebus.windows.net, and use HTTPS. Okay. Best practices for gateways. Keep it up to date. You know, if you open a case with Microsoft, the first thing that it is going to be asked, well, I don't know, I cannot guarantee it. I don't work in that department, but you know, I was also a customer prior to joining Microsoft. They always ask you, is your system up to date? Have you applied all the patches? So before they ask you, make sure that your gateway is up to date. Maybe something was you forgot, and there was a patch, and that fixed the exact issue that you're having now, right? Do not deploy the gateway in a domain controller, please. Don't lose the recovery key. You know, maybe you can keep that in Azure Key Vault so you don't lose it. You can use the gateway service to start and stop through scripts, like if you need to do maintenance, right? Anything that you can automate, automate it. Make your life easier. I'm all for it. And make sure you use the data source and server names. So it's preferred to use that over an IP address. Remember, I just mentioned that less work is better because we want to make sure we automate things. We enjoy life, right? Smell the roses. Is that the terminology? Is that how we say it? Smell the flower, smell the roses? I don't know. I always invent terminology, and then my daughter comes around and says, "Mom, I cannot believe you just said that. No, it's not that movie. It's this movie." So anyway, correct me if I'm wrong. I laugh about my own jokes anyway. You know, maybe I trademark one or two. So now that we have covered some of the basics, right? It's like a one-time setup, really. If we do it right, it's a one-time setup. We set up the gateway, we configure it, we install it, we configure it, and now it's all about adding that data source so that it can handle it. So let's review some of those concepts. The enterprise administration, right? I mentioned the Power Platform, that I can use it for managing, and I have to sign in as a tenant administrator, of course, to manage the gateways, to manage all the gateways. If I'm not, I'm only going to be able to see my gateways. I can add additional administrators, right, to that gateway. So basically everything is moving towards the Power Platform, guys. You know, some of the options, have you seen that trend? Some of the options from Power BI, like scheduling, if we want more flexibility, it's like, okay, go to the Power Platform. I don't know. I'm speaking as a user now. Okay, so gateways. You can also use that as service alerts, manage your gateways as you would manage a service or any other enterprise service that you provide. Make sure that it's always running. Make sure that you use those REST APIs so that you can either add users programmatically or turn it on or off. Check on the status. Is it running? Is it alive? Is it on? And be proactive. Some of the performance tuning that you can use, and I tell you, from the beginning, this is not an area that I have gotten into, but this is, at least I have the information that I'm passing to you, where you can look for this. You can look for that in the config file, the gateway core.dll.config file. The default is almost like SQL Server. The default value is 0, meaning you're using all the 6 containers for that mashup engine. The higher the number of the containers, the more resources you have. What are the performance counters that you can use to monitor? Again, treat it like any major enterprise service that you're providing. My background is in SQL Server. If there is a problem with performance, what do? I run a trace, right? First of all, I want to know what is the issue or where is the issue. I know a lot of web developers always blame my beloved SQL Server, and I say, no, it's not SQL Server, it's your program. And, we go back and forth, butt heads, but jokingly. But then here, no, really serious, I defend SQL Server. Then here we have some counters that we can use to check that, right? ADO.NET, this is for the direct query, ADOMD or OLEDB or the matchup engine. So every product from Microsoft usually comes with a set of specific counters. If we don't have the specific gateway counters, what is it being used for the different functionality, right? That way I can troubleshoot it better. I cannot just say, oh yeah, it's DAX or it's this. No, we cannot just blanket by saying it's one area versus the other. Using the logs, as I mentioned at the very beginning, turn it on if you want to collect information, but as soon as you're done collecting that information, turn it off, right? As soon as that analysis is complete, otherwise you're gonna fail, and if you're gonna forget it, then this can become the issue instead of the solution. And also the event logs, remember, is a service in a server that is being used as a broker. So go to the event log and take a look for on-premise data gateway service. Check what is the service telling you for that period of time where maybe you had an issue, maybe there was an outage. Was there an outage? Did you see that gateway turn off and on? Look for the indication that this was indeed an issue. Maybe the issue was somewhere else in the server, right? Maybe the gateway needs to be moved to another server. If it's not the gateway issue, look for that. So again, keep your gateway up to date. The latest version is always best so that we can discard that from being the issue, right? Resolving the connectivity issues can make sure that I can connect to the physical server with the appropriate client tools, right? So basically what it's saying in this slide is let's do by process of elimination. Have I applied the latest? Can I connect to it? Then escalating it a little more. Is there any latency going on? maybe I can discover that by those counters that I am capturing. And what about the egress charges? Is that keeping the gateway? Oh yeah, network I/O, traditional stuff. What about, is the gateway too far away from my data? That applies for Power BI, and that applies for SQL Server, and that applies for any type of system that you're trying to troubleshoot. Make sure that the data has to travel less. So if you have data in many locations, maybe you work for a company that has branches in Brazil, in Europe, in the United States, then try to maybe design it in a way where you have gateway clusters. That way the gateway can respond to the request to closer to the data. That's the key, closer to the data. Pedro has a question. We have the gateway installed on the same machine hosting our VM, but the data refreshes were consuming too many resources. And we were able to work in Power BI. We moved the gateway to another box, and now we're able to work without issues. Does this violate best practice? So let me see if I understand. So the gateway and the data source were in the exact same machine. Is that it, Pedro? Yes. Okay. So yeah, it's about examining, okay, so SQL Server. Just think about this. SQL Server is probably trying to resolve more issues than just that report, more than just that refresh. So think like SQL Server, and SQL Server, oh, I have to turn the video on. I have too much fun with this. SQL Server goes like, you think I'm not doing anything? What do you think, Power BI? What do you think, Power BI Server? You think I'm here, watching TV? No, I'm working on other things. Wait. And I say it like that because it's probably just like that, where Power BI submitted request to SQL Server. Is that your SQL Server for transactional load, right? Is that your SQL Server that is taking care of other jobs and other things? So yes, it could have been affected by the gateway, because the gateway is grabbing that data, even though it's close by, there is no network I/O, but maybe the CPU, the churning power, it was too much for that server to handle for all the requests. Another thing that can affect it is how you are designing the Power BI queries. Are you selecting the entire table? What is your refreshers doing? Are you refreshing the entire table every time, or are you doing incremental refreshes? Right? So it's about how much horsepower is going to need based on the request that you're submitting, right? Make sure that Power BI and SQL Server work less, right? So I hope I made you laugh. It's like, yes, you made me work too much. You don't consider me, So anyway, I can write a SQL Server novella. Okay, so can I install a gateway in a server that is on AWS? I'm not sure. I haven't worked with AWS. That's a good question, though. Can I host a gateway? Yeah, I am really not sure, but let's think about it. So AWS, that means the server is on the cloud? Rosa? Remember, the gateway should be on-premise, because the gateway architecture is for that broker to grab your request, to take it to the sources, and the sources are going to be the cooks, right? They're going to go like, okay, I'm going to prepare that food. And then they're going to run, they're going to bring the data, meaning the food. I don't know if I'm hungry. then it's going to bring that data and it's going to give it to the broker, and the broker is going to be like, okay, here you go. So maybe that architecture may not work because it needs to be on your own premises. We don't have any infra or on-premise. Everything is VM or AWS. I'm going to have to find out, Rosa. So I owe you that one. Maybe when I find out, I'll pass it to Ceci so we can post it on the comments of the meeting.
Yeah, remember that the VM is considered on-prem, so you should be able to install it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's like a computer.
Yeah, but I don't have any practical knowledge on AWS, so I will have to find out.
There was a previous question a while ago from Alexei. He was asking, from a network perspective, does this gateway uses the network bandwidth allocated to the server or VM when it is running?
Yes, it's going to have to, in order to use the transport protocol to transfer that data back to the Azure Service Bus. So, yeah, so I can do some testing of connectivity, right? If I want to, for example, if I want to put this in a job to continuously probe that connection, you know. So anyway, yeah, these are ideas, right? Remember, performance tuning, configuration is an art. We provide you with best practices, we provide you with ideas, but it's ultimately up to you to test that configuration and to make sure that it works in your environment, right? Ideas, test that connection continuously, have some type of alert. If you find, before your jobs find that it's not working, you need to find out if it's not working, right? And I can manage the gateways via PowerShell, or I can manage them via the REST APIs as well, right? So what I can install that module. I'm not too much into PowerShell, but I can get by, right? Make sure that you install that module, and then you can use several of these commandlets, right, to manage and run, do some administrative work with the Power BI Gateway. Here are more ideas for you. These slides are going to be provided to Ceci so that we have this information for, you know, our learning. Some of the commandlets that I can use for, I'm gonna go back one, you know, for the gateway data source and to find out about the status. Remember, probing, checking, being proactive. Don't wait until something is broken, or you don't want to wait until your customers, meaning your report users, your internal, the people consuming those reports or the job, wake you up in the morning because something is not working. So probe it, run it, alerts. Data Gateway Installer to get or modify the list of users who can install or register new gateways. This is fantastic because what about, I had that question, what about if I don't want somebody in my company to install an on-premise data gateway personal mode? I want to restrict that. So then the other thing is remove users from the gateway or add users. You know, I have gotten so many questions about this and other aspects of Power BI. You can do mostly everything via code, except provision a premium capacity. So everything, add users, remove users, read, you know, workspaces, read reports, export. You can do so many things via code, but there are certain things that you can't. I mean, this might be true today. Maybe next month, the Power BI team is going to come out with a function that can do that. But as far as I know today, so you can do a lot of things except producing premium capacity. All right. So then disabling, this is what I was what I mentioned, disabling on-premises data gateway installation. I had that request from one of those Power BI administrators. It's like, I am tired of turning that on because people call me, they have problems and I haven't given them authorization. But anybody can install it personal mode unless you turn it off. You've got the power. You know the song. If you know the song, then you know what I'm talking about. Enabling and disabling for a specific user or a specific group, right? Remember, you can specify a user just as in this format, right? If you have users and groups in ID. All right. Or disabling gateway installation altogether for the above user. Enabling, disabling. All right. So this is how you do it. And I'm going to provide you with a list of recommendations that are my favorites for managing not only the gateway, but Power BI. So that's it for my presentation. Any questions?
I see two more questions. One from Rosa. She's asking if she should install more than one gateway, one for import connections and one for direct query connections.
Yes, you can install more than one gateway. You have to make them as a gateway cluster so that they work together, right? So if you want to handle traffic, that would be kind of like parallelism, right? One gateway is going to be used for one functionality, the other one for the other. Then make sure that you specify those data sources. For example, one is going to handle direct query. Only that gateway is going to have that passage of those data sources going through it.
The second question from Yaira, she's asking if you use personal gateway from my computer, my local computer, that computer needs to be on all the time.
For the moment that you are running your refreshes, yes, it should be on.
Nestor is saying, perhaps you already covered this at the beginning. I couldn't start the meeting on time. Do I need to install a gateway if I'm only using Power BI on premises and only shared with my organization?
You're using the Power BI on-premise, and where are you publishing your reports? Are you publishing to a Power BI report server, or are you publishing to Power BI service? Here is what I wanted to share with you guys. This I have a bunch of links. Anyway, all of these links are in my presentation. So where are you publishing your reports? That is what matters, right? Let me bring that in a slideshow here. What matters is where is your server. So is your data, okay, here. Where's your data? Yes, everybody's in the same company, everybody's in the same building, everybody is in the same tenant. But if your report is published in the service, notice the clouds, then and your source is on-premise, then you need a gateway. Right, this is the actual architecture.
All right.
Anyway, everybody feels like a special agent now.
I saw Ray wearing the glasses, the black glasses.
I need a gateway. So you asked me that question. Yes, I answered that question earlier.
I actually have glasses that go over my glasses.
Wow.
There you go.
So guys, this is a one-time setup. It's really cool. You know, you can create gateway clusters, and if you create gateway clusters, make sure that you look for them in here in the Power Platform, right? And they will be under gateway clusters, right? And they will be listed here. So you have 3, 4, or 5, right? There we go. That's where you can see them. And you can manage your personal gateways or your enterprise gateways. I only have one because I'm using it in personal mode as well. All right. And we were talking about, you know, when you can actually add administrators to your gateway, but, you know, manage the users so that you're not the only one. I bet there'll probably be more than one administrator over there. Right, so let me go to these links. So I mentioned that we have the Azure IP ranges. Important if you want to secure your gateway at that level. And what that downloads is a list of IP addresses for those who join afterwards. It downloads this JSON file with all of this information. Wow, that can be overwhelming. Why is that important? Why is that important to me? Well, it would only be important if you have internal policies that will, you know, like proxy or policies that will not let you open up the port without specifying the IP addresses. So if you have to do that, then you need to specify that based on the article that I put on the chat window, the first article that has port 443 and then port 9350 to 9354. How do you double check you did a good job? Run a network test and open the results, and then you will see if everything is going through or not. Caveat, if you put IP addresses, you will need to double check that list every single week because it can change every single week. What is a better way of doing it? HTTPS, where you can specify star.servicebus.windows.net. And the port. Okay.
How often should you restart your gateway?
The gateway service, I haven't encountered that question yet, but if it's on the server, let's say you're running it on the server, and the server has 99.99 uptime, I haven't heard specifically of any issues with the gateway service running and having the need to stop and restart, unless you're applying an updated version of that gateway. Good question, though.
Right.
How often? I'm going to find out, and I'm going to make sure I pass that info to Ceci.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I wanted to thank you, Diana, for this amazing presentation and all the fun, and everybody for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Let me know if you like the presentation, if there was some content that maybe you were expecting to hear that you didn't hear. You know, maybe there can be a part 2, you know, mission 2.